Alright, so before I put the supercharger on, I plan on doing that this weekend. Today's Wednesday night, so before I put the supercharger on, what I want to do is I want to capture kind of baseline performance data. So I could take it to a chassis dyno and pay like $200 to do a baseline torque and power number, but I don't really feel like spending that money. Plus, the appointments for dynos are, many weeks from now. So, in the interest of saving money and just getting this done quick, what I'm going to do is just take a few runs down my local racetrack. So, about 25 minutes away, there is an eighth mile drag strip. I wish it was a quarter, but all I've got is an eighth mile. So it's $5 a run. You show up and they put a number on your car, and you can do as many runs as you want. So I'm going to do maybe 2 or 3 runs just to see what the car does stock, and then I'm going to put the supercharger on, get the tune all set up, and when I got it running good, I'll go back to the track with the supercharger and see how much time did we improve by, so I will let you know when we get there. All right, so we made it here. We're in line. We're behind a Mazda and a Ford Fusion. Got a Camaro next to us. Let me when I get up to the line, I'll start filming again. Here we go. This is run number 2. All right, here we go. Let's see what he can do against this. All right, my friends, today is the day. We're going to start the supercharger installation. So I just got the car parked in the same spot we had it when we did the 5-speed swap. And today what I want to start doing is I want to disassemble the engine. I want to basically tear it all down. So we're going to take the intake, the air box, the intake off, drain the coolant. I want to get it down to the bare heads. I'm going to pull the alternator off and get the harmonic balancer off. And I figure, since I'm going to be tearing into it that far, I might as well replace the water pump. So I got a new water pump. In the wintertime, I smell burning oil, and I think my valve cover gaskets are leaking. So while I got it apart, I'm going to do the valve cover gaskets. Maybe get the EGR tube off the driver's side manifold here, and basically I just want to tear it all down and get it ready to install the supercharger onto. Disconnect the fuel line and get the fuel injectors off, get the coils all out of there, so disconnect the battery. So we're going to start doing all that today, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you up right there in a window with a suction cup. I'll figure it out, but we'll just do like a fast forward of me tearing the engine down. Okay. Alrighty, let's go. Alright, so I just wanted to capture a stock condition of the car before I start tearing it apart. So all the vacuum lines I want to document because I'm going to be messing with those. So you see how this one goes. Um, over here we have the PCV valve going to that port. We have our brake booster going there. We have this vacuum line for the evap. This one I don't think we're going to change. That one should remain the same. Heater hose for the intake there. That seems to be it, really. It's our fuel line. We're gonna transfer that over. All right, so I just kind of wanted to capture how it works before I start messing with it. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to show you where I've got to. Excuse me, it's hot out here. It's so damn hot. Milk was a bad choice.
It's so damn hot. Milk was a bad choice.
But anyway, you can see we've got the intake off. I shoved some paper towels in there. You can see just how filthy it is. It's just like mud and crap. So I wanna scrape off all these gasket surfaces, get those nice and clean. I got the water pump off. You saw me took the the whole intake system off, the fuel injectors, fuel rails. Here's just our vacuum lines and the fuel line, and the only thing I got to do is the balancer, harmonic balancer. We got to get that out. God, it feels like it's about 95 degrees. This we got to get off at the manifold down there. That's going to be a pain. But why don't we work on scraping off these and then get the balancer off? We'll do that next. But let me just take a break here. Hang on. All right, so I'm working on getting the balancer off, and just like on the parts motor, the threads for pulling it are all corroded, so I had to go borrow a tap. That's an M8 by 1.25 tap, and I'm just running the tap down into the three threads just to clean those threads up, get all the rust out, so I can get the puller bolts in there. So when I get the puller on there, I'll resume the video. But yeah, I got maybe I can show you. Yeah, see, there's one, and then there's the other one, and then I've got the tap going into that one. So we're just trying to clean out those threads. And you can just see all the crap, see all the rust and crap I cleaned out. So now let's get the puller on. All right, so you can see I've got the puller installed. Those are just intake manifold bolts, from the intake manifold, 3 of them, same thread. And I've got the puller, and now we've got to get a 14 millimeter. And if all goes to plan, just tightening this up should pull this baby right off, I hope. Rotating the engine a little, but I think it's moving. Yeah, here she comes. I spilled beer on the wrench, so it's slippery. Be careful, don't cut yourself. Here it comes. Yep. All right. All right. Sorry, I meant to keep the camera rolling, but I didn't. What I've got going on here is everything is basically disassembled. I've got the valve covers off, water pumps off, harmonic balancers off, the whole intake system is off. I got the EGR hose off. I've cleaned the surfaces of the intake with the razor and some brake clean. I even hit it with the wire wheel. I think you may have saw that. I took a little bit of sandpaper and I just touched up the bore for the water pump. And here's the new water pump. It's a Gates one. I like the Gates brand. It seems to do good for me. The other thing that I'm worried about is this chain. This chain is loose, you know. I don't know if that tensioner is just not tensioning or what. You know, I'm kind of worried about that. And when I'm driving the car, I do hear like a buzzing, and my research is telling me that that's probably what that is. I mean, the motor's got 160,000 on it, and I'm going to put a supercharger on it with a loose timing chain. I mean, Jesus, if I'm into it this deep, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to pull the timing cover off. You know, I'm debating, what should I do? What should I do? What would you do? We'll see. All right, so we're gonna fit check the supercharger. I've got the manifold, the gaskets just sitting on the heads. All right, so for the first time, we're installing the supercharger here, and we're just interfering with this with the wiper tray, just like we were talking about before. So I might have to go in here and just trim this out. No big deal. I kind of was expecting that to maybe happen. You can kind of see our holes they're just about, yeah. You know, well, or just set that on there. I think it looks so good, and like I said, I just got to trim this out. I think what I'm gonna do is because I've got the engine all open here. I think what I'm gonna do is either just lay a blanket over it and a towel or something. Maybe I'll just do that. Lay a towel over it and come in here with my Dremel and just trim this out, and then we have to make an adapter for the throttle body. But let's check the hood clearance, all right, first. Before we go any further, I think I might need to move this guy. This is just pressed in there. That goes to the PCV valve. So let's check hood clearance. So far, so good. Why don't I put you in there so you can see? I can't tell. I think we're gonna hit though. All right, so I just kind of wiggled that. You see how it's just a nice smooth bore, so maybe I can tap that. Looks to be right around the same as 3/8 maybe NPT, but I'll probably put some threads in there and run an angle. All right, so I just took my Dremel and I just kind of sanded it just to get it in there, you know. Now I got all the screws in it, so that's kind of where it's going to sit. So let me see if the hood clears now, and I don't know. there. Let's review the footage. Yeah, I think we're onto something here. And my dad just stopped over and he had a good idea. He said, just take a ball of tin foil. So that's just some aluminum foil. And then we're going to close the hood and see like where, you know, where it's contacting. You hear it crunching already. And I'll give it a little bit of a wiggle. Yeah, so we're kind of smashed right here. That seems to be where it's hitting. Let me put you in there. How did that look? All right, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up these two ribs about as wide as these two oval cutouts. You see how that goes to the hood, you know? So I'm just going to cut two slots and then kind of connect them and just cut two rectangles out. And I think I'm going to try with the Dremel. I don't want to use the angle grinder quite yet. We'll try with this little guy first. I just wanted to show you this real quick. So like I was talking about the other in the videos you just watched, I put this vacuum line just in the vise and I just wiggle it out, and then I tapped the hole. It was a little bit bigger than the necessary drill for a 3/8 NPT. This is a 3/8 18 NPT tap that I borrowed. So you can see this is and then this is a 3/8 by 3/8 90, 3/8 male, 3/8 female. So I'll be able to just, you know, as opposed to this clip-on fitting, I'm just going to thread a barb. You know, we'll just have a barb on there, and that way we've got it lower. So clear the hood. All right. Just another quick update. So this is the tensioner that I'm running for the Supercharger, and remember, this is just a stock tensioner off of a 1995 Mustang GT. So I had this laying around, and this is the original pulley. It's about 3 inches in diameter. And if you remember in the last video, was at part 6, I was a little bit concerned about the belt not having enough tuck. It wasn't like tucking in far enough. So I ordered a little bit larger pulley. You can see that it's about a 1/2 inch in diameter larger. So here it is. Here's the Daco number, and it's got the same bearing and everything. So it'll bolt on there real nice. So now I have just a slightly larger tensioner pulley. All right. So like I said, I didn't realize until I took the valve cover off that my passenger side timing chain is very loose. And it's tight now because I turned the engine counterclockwise. But anyway, as you can see, I've got the colored link. It took me, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 rotations of the crankshaft to get these links to line up. But I've got the colored link aligned with the dot. I've got the colored link aligned with the dot. And then I've got the notch. And then I've got the notch in the balancer marked with top dead center. That's 10 degrees before, that's top dead center on the timing cover. So I had to put the balancer back on, so now I'm pulling it back off. But this is essentially where we want to lock the cams. So we're gonna lock the crankshaft and the camshaft. All right, so what I've done is I've removed the upper cover from the wiper tray, right there, that piece, just so I could see kind of what's in there and what the moving parts are. And then I turned the ignition to on, and all this does for the wiper motor is it just kind of cranks around, and that's causing your wipers to go, you know, to move. So I've got it kind of at the spot where I think would be the closest to our throttle body here, and I had to use my Dremel and file out a little pocket there. We also filed out a little pocket here, and you can see I've got my 2 plates. I tried showing you those in part 6. So I've got these 2 plates that I machined up with a 3-inch bore, and this is a 3-inch piece of exhaust tubing, stainless, and this is a 3-inch 90-degree elbow. And you can see kind of just what I've done. I've made it a little bit of an angle, and I had to put a little extension piece on there. But now our throttle body is rotated back to where it should be, and then I had to use the Dremel and kind of trim out this piece a little bit too. So let me put it all back together, and I just temporarily put the valve cover back on. I'm waiting for the cam holding tools. Those should be here in about 2 or 3 hours according to the website. So I want to just keep going on fabrication, and this little adapter piece needed to get done. So I think we're almost there. Hang on. All right, so I put the air box back on. We got our factory mass airflow sensor. You can see our little accordion there is bent just a little different than it would have been. You know, on the stock car, the stock intake, it kind of goes right about here. So we've got it back a little bit and adding a little bit of an angle, but that's okay. I think we're all right. We're clearing the cover. Let me turn the light on. There you go. We're clearing everything, no interference. You know, we've probably trimmed this out a little bit more than we needed to, but no big deal. It's not going to hit anything. And the only thing is, I think I'm just going to have to maybe trim this off, and then I'll just run just 90-degree, looks like about a 1/2-inch ID rubber hose, as opposed to the clip-on. We'll just probably run a rubber hose down to the valve cover. You know, that's just a breather for the valve, for the crankcase. But I think we've got it. I think this is all right. You can kind of see. So I think we're okay. I think we've made this piece, so now I just got to go in there. Sorry, I just got to go in there with a TIG welder and weld this seam, and that seam. But yeah. All right, so we're back down by the welder. What I've done is I've bolted the throttle body adapter to a spare elbow I have and a spare throttle body I have. I actually have I actually have 3 of these throttle bodies, and you'll see why maybe in a future video. But just to keep everything flat and in the proper plane, so it doesn't warp while I'm welding, I've got these 4 bolts nice and tight, and these 4 bolts nice and tight. All right, so now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna TIG weld this all up, and you can kind of see I just had a piece of 3-inch tubing, and all I needed was a little bit of an angle from this guy. It was $30 for actually 3 of those, so now I got 3 of them. So let's get going here and weld this guy up. All right, we got it, you know, installed, at least for now. So we've got the air box on, mass airflow sensor. We didn't have to change the length of this at all. This is all stock. And then I've got the welding done. I'm debating if I should paint this or not. Maybe I'll paint it blue or black. I'm not sure. But yeah, we got our, so you can see the motor's gonna plug in. This is a little bit different TPS sensor than the one I mocked up, so I had to do a little bit more clearancing here. But yeah, that's it. So now we got to do the EGR tube. So let me get the EGR valve mounted on here real quick, just to kind of see where we're going to line up. And if here's our hose for the coolant, the heater hose. We got to hook that up just temporarily. All right, now we'll work on this side of the engine. So for the first time, I've fitted the real EGR valve. This is one that we're going to run on the car. You can see we have our adapter block. There's going to be a gasket there. Then there's going to be a gasket between our extension block. And then we're going to have to do another gasket here between the valve and the extension block. So how many EGR valve gaskets does your car have? One? So anyway, we're going to have to hook up our own, our EGR tube to here. And it's going to have to go down to the manifold. So let me see what I can do here. Here's the tube that came off the car, and I trimmed. It broke at the manifold, so we're gonna have to weld these pieces back on. So let me see if I can get it kind of fitted. All right, I'm happy I've got this parts motor. So I'm back on the parts motor. I just set the supercharger back on. I've got the EGR valve on. And as you can see, I'm trying to piece together the EGR tube. So we in essence moved the EGR valve, I would say, this way and this way. So I shortened this section, and then I also had to lengthen this section. So you can kind of see what I did here. I added a couple extensions on. I have a brand new piece of fiberglass insulation for this. And then also over here, I had to weld on. I was just kind of piecing it together, and then here's my last connection. So I just put a Sharpie line. So we're going to go try and weld this now, okay? And I think this type of a fitting, it looks like an AN style fitting, and that type of fitting up there, I'm thinking if we don't have it perfect, we'll just get it started on this exhaust manifold side, get it started on the EGR valve, and then we can tighten them down, and that should be fine, So let's try and weld this up. We'll take it back off and up and down, up and down, up and down. But that's how it goes. All right, we got a tack. Let's see if it fits out on the engine. All right, we got it connected, and I think we're all right. I stretched it a little bit, but just fill in this gap with some filler wire, and we're not going to the moon here, boys. All right, I'm happy with this. We got it installed. So here's, it's basically exactly where it would have been on the real car, kind of right above the transmission. There's a big wiring harness back here it's going to clear. And like I said, I've got a brand new fiberglass heat shield for it. And this will be covered up. Nobody will ever see it. So now that I've got I think I'm done now. So I've got everything done for fabrication. So what I want to do is I want to go back on the car. All right, today's episode brought to you by Busch Light. We're going to put the car on ramps and get this timing cover out. So let's just fast forward through that. I just disconnected the AC compressor and power steering pump, and there's 4 13mm bolts that go up into the oil pan. Well, up into the timing cover from the oil pan. So now we're going to take out all the bolts from the front of the engine. All right, we got all the bolts out of the timing cover, we unplug the cam and crank sensor. Should be ready to break the silicone and get this out. All right, so my tool kit came with this crank tool too. So it slides onto the crankshaft right here, and then it should engage with a pin, dowel pin. All right, and then your driver's side cam is at about 1230, and the passenger side cam is at about 11-ish. So now let me pull the tool off and see if the blue dot, or sorry, the blue link and the dot are at 6 o'clock. I'm trying to look through the camera here. The blue dot, the blue link and the dot matched at about 6. I think we're basically as far away from getting this back together as we can. We're at complete disassembly mode. I've got the whole timing system off the car. I just scraped down all the gasket surfaces and wiped them down with some brake clean on a rag. It looks like at the factory they put some RTV, you know, where the heads go and where the oil pan meets the bottom, and then you know, on the valve cover we'll put some RTV there as well. So I think now we can start reassembly. All right, I got it. So we got the outboard front chain on the blue and the dot, and then the other blue dot is right there. So they're both lined up. Okay, so we're timed at the crank end. And then we're timed at the cam here and the cam here. All right, we've got our brand new timing set on. All right, so there's all the old parts, and here's the new one. So we've got our, let's just check one more time. I've tightened everything down. I've double checked. We've got our new tensioners. I've pulled the grenade pin. I checked those bolts. Those are nice and tight. Same thing with our guides. Those are nice and tight. I've got everything ready to install. I've checked the timing multiple times. We're good to go. I've added some RTV on all the junctions from the head to the block, and then from the oil pan down there, we got some new RTV. I've checked all the torques, everything's good. So we're going to throw the timing cover back on. I pressed a new seal in, and you can see I've got new gaskets. So let's go. All right, now I gotta wrestle this passenger side valve cover on. All right, I did some more reassembly here. So I got the new water pump on. You can see it in there. I've got the belt back on. I've installed our new alternator. I got the new harmonic balancer. I got the new supercharger pulley. I've installed our tensioner bracket. I don't know if anyone's ever seen this shot before, but you can see the one bolt that goes into the timing cover and our countersunk bolt that goes into the alternator. And here's where the tensioner goes. I'm going to throw that on next. What else did I do? Basically, everything's back together. So next what I want to do is throw the tensioner on over there by the battery. And then I'm going to crank the engine over 2 complete revs with a ratchet and make sure that I don't feel any resistance, meaning our valves are all opening. So let me do that. All right, we're going to start installing. First thing to go on is the intake manifold. So let me just clean the gasket surfaces one more time and we're going to set the intake on. Alright, we're going to drop the intake on. Got our bolts. I just had to go make 2 bolts for the thermostat housing because the steel one is shorter, so I had to trim the plastic bolts for the plastic intake down a little bit. So now we're going to torque down the manifold. All right, I got a little bit more together, so I got the intake manifold on. It's all bolted down, torqued down. I put the 8 coils back on and plugged them in. I also installed our 3/16 vacuum line. That's our boost reference. You can see it's going to be in the same, you know, boosted cavity where the supercharger is blowing into. We also installed our water temp gauge sending unit. I hooked up the heater hose back there, hooked up the upper radiator hose. So we're getting there. And alternators installed. So next to what I want to do, it's starting to rain, so I think we're going to kind of call it quits for the night, but we got a lot done. Next, what we have to do is make a gasket. I have some gasket paper. I just want to make a gasket for this surface, and then we'll install the adapter plate. But before I install the adapter plate, we got to do the air temp sensor. This is where the probably not the absolute best place for it, but it's really the only place that I could access after the supercharger. I'll show you what I have planned for that. Hang on. All right, so I'm just doing a test for the intake air temp sensor. So like we just talked about, I have that 3/8 NPT threaded port in the intake manifold, and that's the intent there is to measure the temperature of the intake air after it's been compressed through the supercharger, because after the supercharger it's going to be hotter. If we were to measure the temperature of the air as it comes into the engine and then measure it as it goes through the supercharger, it would be hotter after the supercharger. So the engine really needs to know not what the ambient air temperature is or what the air is, you know, under the hood of the car. It really needs to know the temperature of the air going into the cylinders. So we're basically moving the sensor from where it is on the stock car. The stock configuration is part of the mass airflow sensor. So the air temp sensor, intake air temp sensor, would be right here, right in there. Okay, so but since we have a supercharged engine now, we have to move it. You know, so I bought this sensor. This is a second intake air temp sensor, and here's the part number from Ford. This is a Motorcraft one, and I believe that this one is off of a 2010 Mustang, I think. Mustang Cobra. So basically, I want to compare the resistances of the, I'll say, the stock sensor to our aftermarket or replacement sensor. So I printed out this sheet from ADTR, and the mass airflow sensor pigtail is telling me that pin numbers 1 and 2 are your 2 wires you're going to need for the intake air temp sensor. So I stripped pins 1 and 2 from, this is just a junkyard connector. I actually have a spare one of these I got from the junkyard in case I needed to use it for extending, or maybe I needed the plumbing, but I ended up not using it. So I'm just borrowing the connector, and I've got pins 1 and 2 hooked up to a multimeter, and it's telling me that our intake air temp resistance is 35.4 kilo ohms at room temperature. You know, I'm in my basement, so it's, you know, probably like, you know, 70 degrees or so. I'll just say room temperature. So I want to now hook up this sensor to the multimeter and see what we get. So we're at roughly 35 kilo ohms. So let me hook it up to the other sensor real quick. So I'm just gonna, you just basically hook these 2 probes on there, and we're pretty much right on the money, 35.1 kilo ohms. Okay, so I think that Ford is probably using just a standard resistor. All this is a variable resistor that, as air passes over it, it'll change its resistance. So we can kind of simulate that. Let's see how it behaves as warm air passes over it. So this is just my heat gun. I'll put it on low, and I'm going to blow warm air on the sensor, and the resistance should drop. Sure enough, it is. Now I'm blowing it just not on the sensor. It's going back up. Now I'm going to blow it on the sensor again. Going back down, and then it should you know, go back up again. So we have a falling resistance with an increase in temperature. They seem to be having an inverse relationship. So this should normalize right around 35. Let's see how this one behaves. So now we'll hook our multimeter back up to our stock air temp sensor. So we're back to 35 again, and now I'll blow warm air right into the air box there. Yep. And without warm air, it should rise again. Yes. All right. So I think that we should be good to go. We should have a pretty much plug and play. So all we got to do out on the car is snip wires 1 and 2. Well, according to this diagram, it's saying it's signal return. So what I might do is just leave definitely wire number 1. Excuse me, wire number 1 I'm going to wire up to one of these wires, and then wire number 2 I'm gonna make like a 3-way connection. Wire number 2 will go, so this will be wire number 1, this will go to wire number 2, as well as, you know, I'll just tie into it. You know, I'll make like a T. I won't snip it. I'll just kind of tie into it. All right, so that's basically, and you can see how we're almost back to 35 again as it's cooling back off. So now that we know that our replacement intake air temp sensor is having pretty darn close to the same resistance as the stock one, as well as it behaving similarly when warm air is touched, is blown on it, I'm comfortable with going ahead and installing this sensor out on the intake manifold. So that's just kind of what I wanted to show you for the intake air temp sensor. All right, so there it is installed. So next I've made a gasket. Ain't nothing crazy, just something simple. But we have this gasket now that we're gonna have between the adapter plate and the intake. So let me get you set up and we'll get the adapter plate installed. All right, so here's the plate at its finished form. This cutout isn't necessary. That's when I was playing with the police alternator. And then these two inboard holes are mistakes. So we're just using the outboard. Those are for the radiator, sorry, the alternator reinforcement. But here's where the boost goes, and there's where the temp sensor goes. All right, so you just saw me put the adapter plate on. I cleaned up all the RTV, and then I put on our two just alternator replacements, or sorry, alternator reinforcements. Remember, these are just pieces of the factory alternator bracket that came with the 04 parts motor. So we just trimmed those up, and we put a little washer, thick steel washer. So I guess this is a, oh, and then I also put a piece of hose. Remember, that was that vacuum tree that was on the 1993 intake that isn't on the later model 4.6s. So we just welded those shut, but also I just for belt and suspenders, link them together with a piece of hose so that way it can't leak. But maybe we'll just take one more peek in here just so you can kind of see. I mean, it's the front, and then this is that's cylinder number 1, passenger front. And then, I mean, it's not the hey, like I said, I paid $10 for the manifold, I think. Isn't that what I said in part 2? I think I paid, like, with shipping to my house was like $35, you know. All right, so I'm just doing the fuel injectors. So I did those 4 already, and I'm working on these 4 right now. So I'm doing kind of like a rebuild, I would guess. What I've done is I've disassembled the injector. So I took the upper and lower O-ring off. There's also this little pintle cap that kind of just snaps on there. And then I'm using this little tool. There's a bunch of videos online on how to do this, but basically you thread this just kind of like a corkscrew into the end of the injector, and it pulls out this little inlet screen, and actually in pretty decent shape still. So that kind of helps me feel a little bit better that these fuel injectors don't have too many miles on them, or at least a car that they came out of was in fairly decent shape or low mileage. The guy took care of it. So anyway, I've got these ones are clear, so new pintle caps, new screens, and new O-rings. So I'm just gonna lube these up with a little bit of oil. It's just motor oil and a cap there, and keep going. And then I also sprayed them out with some carb clean. So just to clean them up a little bit and make sure I've got fresh O-rings and good filters. Just wanted to show you my gasket I made, and it just so you can see like how nice the ports are actually going to line up. You know, it's like, so let's see. So I just wanted to show you the supercharger one more time before I go out and put it on the car, because it's finished. So I guess we'll start here at the throttle body. So remember, I made those plates with a 3-inch bore, 3/16 stainless, to get the throttle body rotated back the way it's supposed to be. I painted that with clear coat, and I got some new gaskets in there that I made myself with just out of a roll of gasket paper. And then on the back of the elbow here, what used to be just a press-in vacuum fitting, I tapped with 1/8 inch NPT, so I have a combination of 2 1/8 inch NPT elbows, expand up to a 1/4 inch NPT, and then we've installed a 3/8 barb. So this one goes to the evap purge solenoid, and this one goes to the brake booster. And this one up here is a 3/8 NPT 90 with a 3/8 NPT to 5/8 barb, that's going to be for the PCV valve, all right? Okay, and all three of these are going to see just normal engine vacuum. So it's going to be between the throttle body and supercharger. So that should only see vacuum, never see boost. Same thing here. So we've taken just the factory vacuum tree. This third fitting, it used to go to the fuel pressure sensor, but that's now boost referenced. So I used the same fitting to go to our bypass actuator as well as the EGR valve. This is just blocked off with a new gasket that I made myself. All right, now let me flip it over and I can show you the bottom. All right, so here's the bottom, and I just have the gasket. This is a Pontiac, 3800 gasket. So if we line up the holes, you can see here's our bypass and here's our main boost. There's our silencing ports blocked off. So let me just talk about these ports here. There's this one and this one and this one. But if we remove the supercharger gasket, you can see there's actually 3 on this side and 2 on this side. So the ones on this side are all connected to each other, and they go to this port. That, remember how we cut this section off with just a bandsaw. See, here's the bandsaw cut surface, and you can see that this in the casting comes out right here where my thumb is pointing. So that is your crankcase vent. It took me about an hour or two of just studying this thing to figure out how this actually works. But so this port, crankcase vent, and what this is going is, it goes from these 3 ports. So it would be 2 of them, and I believe those on the Pontiac engine, on the L67 General Motors 3.8 liter engine, go to the left and right cylinder head down to the crankcase. And then they go to this port here, and then your throttle body blade would be right about here, and then above that, outboard of that is where it would empty. So it would empty into the mass airflow tube, which is basically between the throttle body and your air cleaner. So it's basically crankcase venting to filtered atmospheric air. I have that on the 4.6 liter. On the passenger side valve cover that goes to our plastic mass airflow tube. So we're covered there. I'm okay to block these off. So these are just going to be blocked off because my supercharger setup just has a flat adapter plate. There's nothing going here. This is just going to be dead ended. These 2 go to the PCV. If I were to remove, I can show you in a shot I already recorded, but if I remove this elbow, right in the case, there is a port that also would see the same vacuum, this line, and this red vacuum tree assembly would see. It's going to see the same vacuum. It would never see boost. It would only see your engine vacuum. And that's going to your PCV valve, because remember, the PCV valve would have been right here. I removed the PCV valve, and that's just an empty cavity with a gasket, because I have an external PCV valve on the passenger side valve cover. So that's also being routed here. So it's going to see the same vacuum as the factory one would, but I'm just running an external PCV valve. So I just kind of wanted to explain what I figured out with these ports, and my main concern was, geez, am I gonna somehow, especially this guy, have a source to this cylinders? Am I gonna have a massive vacuum leak? But we're not. We're safe. The engine is only breathing through the bypass here and through your main rotors. So I think we're good to go here. I just wanted to show you one more time before I go ahead and bolt it up on the engine. So we're going to trim this and trim this. Now these 2 ports go here, and those are for engine coolant. So I think the theory there is, to reduce emissions, you would want to preheat the air coming into the engine. But that'd be bad for us, because we want as cool of air as possible, especially because we're boosted now and we don't have an intercooler. And you can see in the earlier shots in this video of how close it is to the hood, and that's what I was worried about. That's why I didn't even pursue an intercooler on this build, because there just wasn't enough room. I would have had to cut a hole in the hood, you know, so I really kind of wanted to avoid doing that. And don't worry, I have another idea for that. We'll talk about that. Maybe if it's a problem, we can do water or water meth injection. But that's what these two ports are for a preheated throttle body, which we really don't want anyway. This one, see how it would go here, is a direct 90-degree to your idle air control circuit. We don't need an idle air control circuit because we have throttle by wire, and our idle air control is controlled by the computer and by this pulse width modulated motor, which is right here. This is a PWM, a pulse width modulated DC motor that just receives power and ground, and its duty cycle would determine how far the throttle plate opens, which would control our idle air circuit. So I'm just trying to explain that basically all of the systems on the Pontiac are being maintained, and all of the systems on the Ford are still being maintained, and it should operate just fine. Okay, so I just wanted to go over that before I go throw it out in the car, which I'm going to do right now. My neighbor is weed whacking here, but I just wanted to show you the engine one more time before we drop the supercharger on. So like I was just talking about, here's our PCV valve on the passenger side, external one, and then here is our crankcase vent on the driver's side that just goes to the mass airflow tube. All right, and then we got our 03, 04 39 pound-an-hour Cobra injectors on there. We got the only other thing I'm worried about is these no longer are bolted down. They used to be bolted down, but they're not, so I could maybe just make a bracket if that is a problem, which really wouldn't be a big deal. There's our intake air temp sensor. There's our booster reference vacuum source. There's our brake booster hose. Yeah, I think we're ready to go here. We got our new timing set. So let me set you up, and you can see that I just soldered on a length of wire. This is the air temp sensor leads that are going to be tied into this connector, which we'll do today. Yeah, I think we're ready to go. So let me set you up, and we'll fast forward through me plopping the supercharger on. All right, so I got caught in the rain a little bit here, but I just wanted to show you we're almost done. Almost done. I've got the EGR tube started. It's not tight yet, but it's started. I've got the supercharger bolted down. I've got the throttle hooked up. There's our motor, and there's our those are redundant throttle position sensors, redundant potentiometers. I got the belt on the tensioner just as a fit check. It's a lot. I think it's tensioned much better with the larger pulley. Got the PCV valve hose. That's just a piece of 5/8 heater hose. I've got the EGR tube, and you can see there's a brand new insulation, fiberglass insulation, and it's clearing the wire bundle there nicely. We've got our 2 socketed cap screws, stainless tight. We've got our 3 EGR gaskets I was teasing you about, and everything is pretty much good on this side. The only thing is I discovered that we're going to have to make a T. One of the 3/8 hoses there didn't quite clear the plate. I must have missed that in my design, but that's okay. I just put a plug in there, and we're just going to run a T off of. I mean, they're both going to the same place, so it's really no big deal. vacuum is vacuum, really, as long as it's going to the same location, you know, same source. And then, yeah, the only other thing we got to do is really wire up the mass airflow connector. Wanted to show you the mass airflow sensor connector. So on the left is pin 1, and you can see that I've completely snipped pin 1 from the connector, so this is just going to be a dead pin now. And I've ran that. This was the gray wire, so I ran that right here. This goes directly to the new air temp sensor at the back of the manifold there. So pin 1 now goes to one of the 2 wires on the new sensor. And the new sensor is just a resistor, and resistors don't care which direction, so you can wire either wire to either wire. You know, it doesn't matter. The direction doesn't matter. Pin 2, you can see what I did is I still have it connected to the connector. This might not be necessary, but I'm just doing it this way anyway. If this pin, you know, is no longer necessary, it's not going to hurt anything by having it hooked up still. So what I did is I basically left it connected to the mass airflow sensor, and then I just made a T. I made a Y. I just tapped into it. You know, so this wire would go to the ECU, and this wire goes to our new sensor. Okay, so that's the wiring. Now I'm just gonna, you know, bundle this back up and make it look nice again. Here, I got everything assembled. I just wanted to show you underneath the car. So here we have the balancer with our stock pulley, and then we have our aftermarket AC Delco pulley, and then I just kind of pulled on our I think that's our oil cooler line, just to keep it away from the supercharger pulley here. And I just wanted to show you underneath. You can see up to the supercharger there. That's kind of a neat shot. All right, so let's go on top now. I mean, here we are. This is it. We are mere minutes before 0 hour here. Everything is done. I've got everything done. The entire supercharger system has been installed. I have everything ready to start. I've got the battery hooked back up. You can see I've hooked up our mass airflow sensor, our air box. We've got our breather hooked up. I'm gonna have to come up with something a little bit better for that, but it'll be good for a first fire. Throttle body's hooked back up. We got our bypass, all our vacuum lines, PCV. You can see we put the belt on. There's our new tensioner. You can see we're running a 540 K6 belt, so that's a 54-inch belt. It's I would say the tension is good. There's our 3.4-inch pulley. Everything is good here. I can show you back here. We've got, the only other thing is we're going to have to run a T. We can't drive the car, but we can fire it up. Our brake booster ain't hooked up right now, but that's okay. Everything else is hooked up. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how it looks like. And now let's go in the car, and we're going to turn the key to on and kind of work with the computer a little bit. So we're in the car. I've got the keys in the ignition, and I've got the ignition to on, and I've got my scan tool hooked up. So my goal here is to see the engine has not been started, and the mass airflow sensor and intake air temp sensor and, you know, everything in the engine bay should all be reading ambient temperature. And according to my cell phone, it's 75 degrees outside. So I want to go in here, and we're going to enter into the ECU, and this is a scan tool where I can data log and also, you know, capture live data from the car. So here we are entering into the ECU, and, you know, it's going to tell us everything. You know, engine coolant temperature is 66. That's a little bit cool. It's 75 degrees out. But we'll go down to the next page and the next page, and there we are. Intake air temp 75. So I mean, that's right on the money. That's right. That's right on the money. So we wired up our new sensor, so we're good to go here, I think. Now let's check our if there's any codes in the ECU. I want to read any, you know, trouble codes. No fault codes. All right, so we're in neutral. I just want to verify that. Now the engine is basically ready to start. I'm ready to start it for the first time. I have not, here's my tuner. This is just a scan tool. This is my tuner, right? If you've watched my 5-speed swap, there's, you know, we got a 5-speed in this car. So I have a tune to disable the automatic transmission. So I'm going to hook up my tuner, but my point of this clip here is, you know, I have not loaded any tunes. This is the stock engine tune. So what I want to do now is start up the car for the first time. And so let's get set up with that. All right, can you see the bypass? Yeah, you can see the bypass. It's right there. All right, so watch that lever. I'm going to start it up now. Cross your fingers for me. Here we go. Running. All right, that's good. Let's check a few things here. I'm real excited. It's running. It's making all kinds of weird noises. The bypass sure as hell is wide open. I hope you guys saw that. It's wide open. Let's go inside and check our air-fuel ratios. We're running about a little bit different vacuum than before. And we're rich, so that makes sense. You know, the engine has larger injectors in it, so it's rich. I'm going to shut it down now. I'm making kind of weird noises, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. If I have a big vacuum leak or not, but it seemed to be maintaining RPM. What is that noise? Well, there's our balancer pulley. It's running really true. All right, we got the belt back on. Let me start it up again and see if that whistling goes away. That could be what that noise is. You know, just air leaking through the vanes or the rotors. I'm not sure. I'm nervous, but I don't think anything is wrong. We haven't really done anything wrong yet, so I'm just going to start it up again with the supercharger hooked up for the first time. So you're going to see the blower spin for the first time. We are running a little rich, but we do have proper vacuum. I'm just going to touch the gas. Looks like our water temp gauge is working. We're building pressure building temp for the first time. And you can see the supercharger spinning, and that's kind of a neat shot. That whistle, I don't know what that is, but let's go into our, see what our intake temps are. Coolant temp is heating up at 111, which, yeah, okay, I'll buy that. And then we'll go. RPM is 900. Okay. And then we'll go down. Intake air says 86, which all right. So it's 75 ambient. It's heating up. Let's pulse the gas and see what it does. Well, just idle down. Just idle down. But we are rich. Sounds pretty good. What are we at now? So it's working. Our intake air temp sensor is responding. I just don't know what that whistle is. We had a quarter tank of gas. It must have evaporated because I had the fuel line unhooked for a few weeks. We need to go get some fuel, 93 octane. Okay, so I found the noise. This is just the idler. well, the tensioner pulley, and I also replaced the idler pulley. So when I had the timing cover off for the timing chain rebuild, I pressure washed and degreased the timing cover. So I bet you I just blasted some dirt in there or something, but it does just feel very old and rough. So now we have a brand new tensioner assembly and a brand new idler pulley. So let's fire it up again, and it should be nice and quiet this time. Nice and quiet, no more noise. We might want to space out our tensioner just maybe another two fender washers. I should do that. Got a nice good vacuum. Let's let our engine warm up here, or we'll just let it idle. Alright, so I added two more fender washers to our tensioner, and you can see our belt's running a little bit better. And I went to the gas station and I got some 93. So we got 5 gallons of fresh 93 octane. I'm going to set you right here, and I'm going to pulse the gas. And I'm going to pulse the gas a few times, and I want you to see if that closes. Sounds like a supercharger, boys. I think we're in business. Alright, so I'm going to call this video a success. So we have a couple little things to finish up. I'm going to cover that, and we'll just do it part 7A or something like that. In that video we'll cover the tuning process. That the car definitely needs a tune. It's running pig rich. At idle, it's idling at about 10.3 to 1, and when I'm on the boost, it just pegs out the AFR gauge rich. The car definitely needs a tune, so I'm going to have to cover that maybe in another video. But and really kind of irks me. You can see right there, the pulley just kissed the hood when I closed it. I think maybe with the belt on there, it just kissed it, and if you look very, very closely, actually you can't tell on the video, but there's a tiny little dent in the hood, and I'm angry about that. So I'm going to be forced to run the 3.3 inch pulley. So we'll get a little bit more boost out of it. But I really appreciate everybody watching. I'm really excited with how it came out. If you stick around with a little bit longer, I'm going to have some in-car shots of it and everything. But the video is already over an hour long, so I'm gonna cut it here. But yeah, that's it. I'm really excited, and everything seems to be operating just fine. And we'll cover the tuning next, because it's definitely way too rich. So stay tuned for the next one.